Hey guys, welcome back to Project White Fang. Today we're going to discuss a little bit about swapping out the interiors. Now, not the interior per se, but the wiring harness for the interior. You have to remove the cluster, all the wiring to the ignition. I need to run my ECU out of my donor car. All that has to be done so when I drop in the 32 valve engine, it's going to fire right over just like it came from the factory. Now, as we talked about in the first video, I'm using a 98 GT as a donor car, but I've already done my wiring harness conversion. I've already had the car on the road and running. I never had it tuned, but the computer will run a 32 valve engine. It just doesn't have the ceiling for RPM range a GT versus a Cobra does. But what we will do, we will make this the finished project. So when we swap in everything, harness and all, we'll take it down, we'll get some dyno numbers. I'm hoping to put down roughly 275 plus to the rear wheels on a Mark 8 engine. But we need to go over a little bit about what has to be done. We need a dash removal to get to the harness. We need to remove all the V6 stuff, get it out of the way so we can take the V8 stuff and put it in here. We're going to put back on the dash so it will look very unsuspecting. I want to leave it mainly stock, so what's going to happen now is we're going to start the removal of the interior. We'll go step-by-step process so you can see how to do that. First, we'll start with the seats, center console, and go from there. So, stay tuned. Okay, I know this is a simple process. Everybody's removed a seat or two, but it's 4 bolts on a Mustang. It's 2 in front, 2 in rear. The fronts are a 5/8. Little ratchet is easiest to use. I do the 2 front first, and then I swap over to the 2 rear. We'll pull this out. The reason I'm removing the seats is it's a little easier when we're accessing the dash here to get that out of your way and have more room, because again, we are removing the entire wiring harness. I'm going to swap in my 98 ECU so I can run a 32 valve in this bad boy. So stay tuned. We will go on to the center console next. We'll show you step-by-step process, but until then, it's 4 little nuts to remove each seat. 2 in the front, 2 in back, then we'll get to the dash. Okay, so we're removing the front seats in this. It just makes accessing the dash much easier, gives you a lot more room. I probably want to pull the carpet kit out anyway. There's thick padding under here that I like to remove because I want to keep the car as light as possible. We'll get to that as the project moves forward, but we'll talk a little bit about it. It's a 5/8 inch ratchet. There's 2 bolts in the rear, and there's 2 nuts up front, which studs are already on the frame of the car. And if you're fortunate enough to get a Mustang that still has the plastic covers, it's just a #1 Phillips head. You loosen this, pull it out of the bracket, and that lets you access the 2 back brackets to unbolt them. We're going to move on to the driver's side, and then we'll pick this back up at the dash. Okay, so when doing the driver's side, make sure you leave the battery on. This happens to be a power operated seat. So before disconnecting the battery, make sure you get all these bolts loose so that you can get the seat out. And this has a little power harness right here. I don't know if y'all can see that, but this clip has to be undone. The 2 bolts are here, so the seat has to slide all the way forward to access these 2 bolts. But once they're done, this is out, and then we will pull out the center console. Okay, so now we're on to the center console. How you get to this is you take these rubber plugs out. There's 3 of them in this case. I just dump them in here. What you're going to get, actually there's just 2. You're going to get a little Phillips head screwdriver in here, and you're going to take these out. It's going to let you access the bracket that's bolting this to the chassis, and then we'll have 2 other bolts up there which we will show you in just a second. But once these are out, then you can access and pull this out. I just dump everything in the container. He actually only does 1. Pops out as such. Now we can get to the 2 7mm bolts that are down in here. You remove those, remove the 4 that's up front, and this whole thing will come out so we can start removal of the dash, removal of the steering column, and get all our wiring harness exchanged out for Project White Fang. So we'll remove the front. These are pretty simple. These are just pop in make sure you get all of them and you don't break anything. You'll have a wiring harness back here that for the cigarette lighter. Come up, take it to the side. You have a plug in here and a plug there, and just remove as such. Then you can access these two bolts here, pull the e-brake up, and we'll slide this off. So stay with me right here. I'll show you how simple this is. Somebody's pulled this before because they've changed the bolts. They probably, it looks like a newer carpet kit, but you never know. That is a little Torx wrench. Let me grab that and we'll get back to you. Okay, so we've removed the center console, 2 bolts up here, 2 back here on this plate. Again, make sure this is in neutral. Pull your e-brake up as high as you can and pull it out. Now we need to get to the column. We're going to remove this plate right here. It's 2 8mm bolts, 1 on each side, and this will pop down. Like I said, somebody's worked on this before. It's missing one, so the other side was not there. You're just going to go through here and massage this off as not to break any tabs. Once it comes loose, as such. As you can tell, they've broken it right here, but it's not too bad. But you know, it's usually when people are putting on alarms, which is what this car had on it, those people don't care. So be very careful when you take to have your car worked on. There's a lot of these places that just don't care, and they're going to break off tabs like this. So we'll have to just be very careful in the future. You're going to come to a metal plate now. Again, it's the same 8mm bolts. That's going to come off. We're going to have a little cross member here. And to get the steering column out, it's 2 9/16, actually 4 9/16 bolts that it will drop down. We'll unconnect the harnesses and we'll pull the steering column out. We'll see you then. So we talked a minute ago about the torque setting. All seat belts in Mustangs, as far as my knowledge, from 79 to 04, use a T50 to take the seat belts off the chassis so you can remove the carpet kit. There's 4, 2 for the back for the actual harness and where you plug it into. So I'll remove these 4, and then we'll take the sides off, and then we'll pull the carpet kit out of the car, and then we'll begin or finish removal of the front dash.